That's right. Keep going.
Keep going?
Yeah, keep
Okay. So this grass is relatively common. You could find it in deep soils. You could find it in shallower soils on the top of a caliche hill. Maybe if it wasn't too overly grazed, but I probably wouldn't be looking for it too hard. It does need some soil. Let's see. It can take a little bit of shade, but not too terribly much. It's a very versatile grass, and you would find it across the state of Texas. But that being said, I do think that there is a grass that is a better state grass of Texas. And I did say that. And you know what? I brought it here with me today. All right. So Zoom audience, look at this grass, make your guesses. This one is very green. This is one that I dug up myself. It's very common, as I said. So don't feel bad. It's okay. It's okay. I think I can do this legally, right? Anyway, this grass is little bluestem. Now, this is why I think it should be the state grass of Texas. Cytoxgrama, yes, it's pretty darn common around here, the state of Texas, but this grass is everywhere. I went on vacation to Hawaii and I saw this grass there, and apparently it's an invasive species over there. So it is everywhere, but Hawaii is not Texas. But I found it in the piney woods. When I was down there in Brazoria, it was down there around the coast. It's in South Texas. It's in West Texas, in the wetter regions, but it is in West Texas. And I'm sure it's up there in the Panhandle as well. You cannot get away from this grass unless you're in the city. And I don't really think it's in the city. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be the state grass of Texas. If we were counting characteristics of it being everywhere, then that would be Bermuda grass, which is an invasive grass.
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be in the cities. So little bluestem is actually technically not that little. Is it working? No. Okay. It gets about maybe hip high on my hips. That's about, I don't know, maybe 3.5 feet, or maybe I'm being elaborate. No. It gets about, no, it doesn't get shoulder high. It gets about hip high on most people. Yeah. And it is very easy to identify. This is one of those grasses that as you're driving along, trying to impress people, you can show off and tell them that you know your stuff. So as you're driving along in the fall, this is only going to work in the fall, so don't bother doing this in the spring. As you're driving along, you see off in the distance on the side of the road this big grass that is waving, and it's red. It's like this rust red color. That is this grass right here. Now you may be like, what? It's bright spring green, Beth. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, when it dies, the foliage becomes like a rust color. So, and it's called a bluestem. I honestly think that the people who name plants might be colorblind. I'm not sure. Anyway,
Beth,
is it working?
Yeah, but I can't get a presenter view. You're gonna have to just.
That's fine. That's fine. This is functional enough. So we're going to like come back to little bluestem in a little bit, and y'all will be all on your seats about little bluestem. Yes. Okay. So okay. Who here, raise your hand if you have ever used an app to identify a plant. Okay. How well did it work for the grasses? Hey, as I was saying, grasses don't get any respect whatsoever. So, here's how to identify them without an app. First, you need to look at some following cues. What do the seed heads look like? For example, we're going to use this lovely red rock. So when I find a plant or a grass that I don't know, these are the first things that I look at. I'm going to look at the seed heads to see if they have any. And if I'm lucky, they will have seed heads. And if they don't, I'm just going to ignore it and hope the person that I'm with on a site visit doesn't notice it and ask me what it is. So this is red grama, and it plainly has seed heads. So these seed heads are actually fairly distinctive. They don't have the stinger on the end. Sometimes they're red, though. With my kids in range judging, I tell them it's red, and then they come back, oh no, that's purple. And then one kid's finally agreed. We finally came to a consensus that it was at least maroon, but it was not red. So anyway, I'm going to look at the seed heads. I'm going to look at, see what color they are. I'm going to look and see what shape they are and that kind of thing. And then I'm going to see if they have any unusual characteristics. Like if a grass is very small and hugging the ground, and the other grasses around it are very tall and lush. Well, that's kind of unusual. That might help me identify it. If the grass has an unusual seed head, or if the grass has unusual looking wrinkles on the edge of the leaf or the pimple in the hair like the side oats have, that's going to help me identify it. And then what color it is. Now, as I said before, color is kind of relative. This is red grama. It is not red right now. Does it look like it's red to y'all? No, it is not red right now. So that's not very helpful. And let's look at this little blue stem. Did you know that little blue stem can be the spring green color, and then in the more eastern parts of the state, it will be kind of like a bluish green color? The foliage will be. And so it's like, well, color is kind of variable. And I mean, people see color differently. So color isn't the strongest thing to rely on all the time, but it can be helpful. Then size. Size is helpful too, but it may not be helpful all the time. Let's take this, tridents, for example. So this is Hairy Tridents. This is a little small grass that likes to grow in caliche, so it typically doesn't get very big. But you'll notice this one is in a pot. It has been being watered regularly, and it might have gotten a little bit of fertilizer too. So as a horticulturist, I can take plants that normally would be very small and insignificant and make them grow really big. But on the flip side, if you're out there walking in the pasture or walking around nature and such, and you see an area that has been mowed a lot, or if you see an area that has been heavily grazed, the plants there may not be their normal size. In fact, they likely will not be. So that can kind of change things a little bit. So size is good, but it's not always that good. One thing that's really helpful for me, and that's how I organized this presentation until I skipped ahead, was where is it growing? So there are some plants that will grow only in specific areas. I mean, think about with your wetland plants. There's facultative wetland plants. There's other wetland plants that just grow right there in the water. So now there's not really a lot of, the grasses we're going to talk about today are not growing right there in the water. These are going to be more outside the water, but there's plants that grow only in specific areas. And then if all else fails, which it sometimes does, there's no shame in admitting it, you want to have a good picture guide handy, like this. Ta-da! So this is one that my coworker has. I don't need that one. Can you read the title on it? Oh, the title of that one? It is Range Plants of North Central Texas. And if you want to come look at it later, it does have amazing pictures. See? Pictures. I hope I do not leave that here. He needs that book. So good picture guides are helpful. There is actually an even better one out there for grasses that I do not have on me today, but it has amazing pictures, and I've forgotten its name, which is not very helpful. All right. So grasses have their special terms. You have your Asteraceae family, and it has its achenes and disc flowers and all that fancy stuff that you need to know how to keep a stupid flower out. Grasses have their terms as well too, but we're only going to go over the simple ones. We are not going to go over pallias, lemmas, and that kind of thing. So, but when you have a grass, the stalk is called a culm. The leaf blades come off of the culm, and then the flower is the seed head there at top. That's not too bad, right? That's not too bad. Do y'all go over grasses in your botany class with Master Naturalist? All right, so you learn all these fancy terms, that kind of thing. Oh, this is so nice. You try telling these to the kids and their eyes just widen, and then, you know, just to stop talking because they're not listening. With our grasses, one important thing to look for is the color. So this is Canada Wildripe, and it's got a color on it. It's got a very obvious color. So the color is going to be the part where the leaf blade matches the culm. So you pull it apart and then you look. Now, Canada Wildripe is special because its collar wraps around the stem pretty tightly. So that's why it didn't come off very cleanly, and I should have realized that. That's one of the special unusual things that we can sometimes use to help us identify grasses. Then y'all know that runners above ground are called stolons. Runners below grounds are called rhizomes. What's one grass that has particularly nasty rhizomes. Johnson grass, exactly. Gosh, you read my mind. So looking at the seed head types, I'm not going to really refer to these too much. We have spike seed heads, which is an example of side oaks. Basically, the seeds are right there on the seed head. There's spicate raceme, and then open panicle. Open panicle is pretty easy because it's kind of like a Christmas tree. You have all those branches and then coming off in different layers, and then sometimes the branches will branch. Yes. I cannot. Yeah, this was the only way that we could get it working. So it is. I'm sorry, but
The slide side. Yeah.
enlarge the slide size. Okay. Oh,
Too big.
I don't think that's gonna work. I can get that big. Is that a little bit better? Okay. All right. So I mentioned why plants grow where. So different plants can grow in different areas based on some following characteristics. The number one is going to be soil depth. I mean, think about it this way. How many of y'all live on a caliche hill? Okay. Are the grasses the same on top of the caliche hill as they are on the bottom of the caliche hill? No, because the soil depth is not there. Now, caliche is technically soil, but it's not very good for growing plants because it is very compacted and it may not have the nutrients that is needed. It's very compacted, so the roots can't get in there. So when I talk about soil, I'm not talking about caliche. I'm talking about good, rich topsoil. And when I say deep, apparently there are these places out there that have like 30-foot topsoil. It's just ridiculous. I have a hard time believing that that exists. So when I say deep, I mean about greater than a foot to 2 feet. That would be what I would consider deep. There's also places out there that don't have rocks. So weird. So weird. Another thing is going to be water availability. So some of these grasses are more adapted to areas that are drier than areas that are wetter. So take, for example, this tiny little hairy tridents. Yes, and I know there's other stuff in there. So this hairy tridents is adapted to a very shallow soil that can be very dry too. It has good resurrection potential, like it'll come back very quickly if it gets a rain. Now, and it can survive like a pretty nasty drought. But if I took a switchgrass, for example, and planted it on a very shallow soil, it has a root system that needs to go down, and so it necessarily wouldn't do too well. Maybe not a switchgrass, maybe a cupgrass. Then there's sun and shade. So a lot of these grasses, they are adapted to kind of live in shade. Take Texas wintergrass, for example. This grass does so well in shade that it could potentially outcompete King Ranch bluestem. I kind of saw an example of this on my parents' ranch. So they have this pasture that is horribly overgrazed. And in the areas that are in full blazing sun and the heat, it's King Ranch bluestem. It's almost solid King Ranch bluestem. But underneath the live oaks, it is Texas wintergrass. And as the live oaks have been dying back due to oak wilt, the King Ranch bluestem has kind of started to move in, or at least compete better, because the Texas wintergrass was gaining kind of a benefit being underneath the shade. Kind of held the moisture better. The King Ranch bluestem couldn't compete as well. So how much sun is available can kind of help you identify specific grasses if you know that information about them. Then soil type. So there's a couple of grasses. There's these windmill grasses. In Fredericksburg, you're not going to see hooded windmill grass in a clay loam or a loamish type soil. It's usually going to be only in sandy soils. So some of these grasses are better adapted to soil types than others. And then prior land management. If the pasture or the land was overgrazed historically, the seed bank isn't going to be there. And it doesn't really matter how much deep soil is there. The grasses just aren't there anymore. So if it's been overgrazed heavily, there's just the good candy grasses that have a high forage value are just not there anymore. So So the first kind of ecosystem, this is kind of like roughly an ecosystem. Y'all are probably a lot more advanced in ecosystems than I am. But the first kind of like growing zone that we're going to cover is going to be riparian zones. So this is where the grasses are usually taller because they have the water availability. Sometimes if you are looking at an upland site, it can indicate poor drainage. So in Gillespie County, our septic surveyor, he will actually look for specific plants that kind of indicate if you can put a septic system there or not, based on how well the draining. So if you see a lot of sedges in an upland area, that probably does not drain very well. If I was to see switchgrass in an upland area that had not been intentionally planted, I would be highly suspicious. Speaking of switchgrass, this is our first official grass. This is Panicum virgatum, and this is a big grass. This grass is huge. It can get taller than I am. And it has been used for like biofuels and such. They looked at it. I had a cousin who was involved in that, but I don't think it's really going to pan out, so to say. So it's a panicum. The Latin name is Panicum virgatum. And being a panicum, it's going to have like these small BB seeds. The seed is a panicle seed head, so it's pyramid shaped and it's usually quite big. Now, one interesting thing about switchgrass, and I should have brought some in, is that the leaves kind of have a crimp in them. This is so that if you go up to the switchgrass and pull on a leaf, you're only going to get part of the leaf. It's going to break at the crimp, at least ideally. Another characteristic to identify it is that it comes out of the ground like soda straws. So some of these grasses have flat bases, and they come out just from like that flat base, but switchgrass will come out individually and such. Another grass is going to be broom sedge bluestem. If you see this one, you know that there is water nearby, or this area holds water for a longer time than other places. This one gets a nasty reputation in Brazoria County. They actually consider it a pasture weed because it'll just grow like in the middle of fields and that kind of thing, because they get that much rain there and the soil does not drain. But around here, it's not that big of an issue. I kind of like it. The big puffy white seeds I think are kind of attractive. They stick out of what is called a spathe. So if you take your thumb and your pointer finger, that's kind of like a spathe on a grass. It basically holds the seeds, so to say. It's like a container. Flat base, bright green color, puffy white seeds. Grows near water. So now we're going to talk deep soil grasses. Now, switchgrass can grow in a deep soil. Don't get me wrong there. But you may find it in deep soils. Broom sedge bluestem, unlikely, but you could. So some of these grasses can grow in multiple spots. So keep that in mind as we go along. The first one is going to be eastern gama grass. Now, eastern gama grass does have the potential to grow kind of in riparian areas. It likes that a lot. But I didn't put in those areas for a specific reason. I have seen this grass just randomly growing on the side of the road. In fact, there is a lovely colony of it on, I forgot what the road is called, but it's the main road and it drives into Lakey. And it's just there, growing on the side of the road. No river right by. Now, well, there is a creek, maybe about 300, 400 yards away. So it's technically floodplain, but it is not growing directly on a creek bank. This grass has a flat base, but it's not going to be something that you want to go in there and look at because, you know, there are some plants out there that just look plain snaky. Do y'all know what I mean when I say snaky? We had a conversation about this in my office the other day. One of our secretaries hadn't heard the term before, and I was like, it's when it looks like it has a high chance of having a snake in it. That's what snaky means. So this grass has a lot of leaves and foliage down there at the base, and you can't see directly inside of it. So that's not something that I want to stick my hands in and look at the flatness of the base. Fortunately, you can helpfully identify it because it is this big old bunch. It grows in like this big old clump. So that's helpful. And then the seed head is very unique. It has, it'll have the male parts on top of the seed head and the female parts will be below. And they look kind of like a kernel of corn. Some people think that this was, that isn't showing up well in the picture, is it? Well, y'all will see it later. Some people think that this was like one of the descendants of corn or that kind of thing, but other people are like, well, it's not close enough related, so whatever. We're going to let them argue about that and get their PhDs that way. So this grass, let's see. Oh, it's got a disappearing white midrib. So on a grass, the midrib is the part in the middle of the leaf. It's the midrib. The one on this one will disappear. So it'll be like white and then it'll stop halfway. So if you see this grass, that's a good sign. Our next grass is big blue stem. This is an interesting grass because this is the grass that I typically only see if we get years where we get a decent amount of rainfall. So I actually saw the grass this year. So hey, we got a decent amount of rainfall at the right time, I guess. It does get tall. So you may be like, oh, you talked about little blue stem earlier. It gets hip high. That's pretty tall. How tall does big blue stem get? Well, big blue stem can get this tall, but it's not going to do that around here. We don't get enough rain for that around here. This is like in Oklahoma. Yes, I went on vacation and I took a picture of myself with a very big blue stem. So whatever. I'm sure y'all have done something similar with like a bird or a butterfly. So anyway, so the big blue stem was this tall. It can get seriously big if it has the deep soil and if it has the water. Now, you're going to be looking more like this tall. So don't be looking for grasses this tall. Look for grasses this tall. It has what we call is a turkey foot seed head. So it kind of forks out that way. Yeah, you can kind of see that. It's sometimes hairy at the base of the plant. So when I was in FFA, we used hair at the base of the plant as an identification, as a one way to kind of help us identify it. But then lo and behold, we would go to contests and there would have plants that didn't have that there. So sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't have it. Don't rely on that. The ligule extends around the collar. I noticed that when I was messing with the big blue stem over there. You can go mess with it later if you want to. And oh, so like the little blue stem, it dries out a pretty red color. So if you are so in love with this grass, they actually have varieties of it that you can use in your landscaping, though you will probably have to order it in. Yellow Indian grass. This is Sargassum nutrens. It is very easy to identify. It has a bunny ear at the collar. So just kind of look for, you know how bunnies have two ears kind of sticking up, kind of look for like a V where when you pull the leaf blade away. This one will typically form colonies. It has a fluffy yellow seed head, kind of nice. It typically likes a deep soil. I have seen it in shadier areas as well, but not full shade. So now we're going to look at some medium soil plants, and I've already covered a few of these. Here we have Cytoxgrama, and if you remember, it has the pimple and the hair on the leaf blade. Here's little blue stem again. As you can see, some of the pictures do have some, they have some of the reddishness in there and such. I also forgot to mention that it has these small puffy white seed heads down the stalk. Oh, and as you're driving, that's how you can recognize it. It has the reddish stems, and it usually grows in mass. Texas wintergrass. This one I forgot to mention is also called speargrass. So if you have grandkids or kids and they take a bunch of these seed heads and they throw them at each other, that is that grass. And it's pretty prolific right now. Now, there's a kind of a negative about that with the little spears. So in sheep, these spears will enter the wool, and as they dry, they will curl, and they can sometimes injure sheep by getting stuck in the skin. Now, this is a good thing when it hits like ground, like dirt, because it will dry out and then the seeds can kind of corkscrew themselves into the ground. But it's not good if they get into sheep wool, and they could potentially do that for dogs. But I don't think they're going to do that for that dog. His fur too short. But fluffy dogs would be in danger. The foliage also feels very rough, kind of like a cat's tongue. If you felt this grass, you instantly know what it was. And I have some up here if you want to come feel it later. Canada wild rye, that's the grass. It does have a seed head that is similar to wheat or rye. I guess it's probably more rye. Wheat is more high-packed. It has awns sticking off of it, and it's supposed to curl a little bit, though this one did not get the memo, and so it's decided that it's not going to curl. It has, this one is kind of tight-laced plant. Its collar is very tight around its neck, around the culm. So it's kind of overlaps a little bit, so to say. It likes shade. It can grow a little bit in sun, but you're probably going to find it in shade, and it's a cool season grass. So this grass is pretty much nearly finished seeding out right now. So that's kind of why this one is yellowing back. It's not because I've been forgetting to water it. Huh, it's not that at all. Green sprangletop. This one is Leptoclobia dubia. It has sheaths that are keeled and flattened. So it basically has a flat face, and it has a seed head that is kind of like a firework coming out. So that's why they call it a sprangletop. Now this one is immature, it's still young. It has that flat base. It does have the purplish coloring on it, but the seed heads are just starting to come out. And one of the characteristics that helps me identify it is looking at the seeds. They look like somebody went over there and clipped the tips with a fingernail clipper. So it is a very neat and manicured plant, but then it likes to have a party with the seed head. So I mentioned Texas cupgrass. It's a little bit better. You can kind of see the cups now with that picture. Vine mesquite. This one is, I don't know if you could really call it a sod forming grass. It's kind of annoying, to be honest. It has these big, long, viney runners on top. And so if you're walking through the grass, this grass can easily catch you and trip you. The seeds are valuable for wildlife. It's a panicum, so they have these big ball BB-like seeds. This one can form colonies with all those runners and such, and it likes shade. There's a lot of this in South Texas. The nodes are very hairy as well too, which is a little unusual, and they're big and thick. So if you're looking at it, comparing it to buffalo grass, and you don't have a seed head, just looking at the leaf blades of this one should be able to help you identify it. So we're going to go into shallow soil or not as much rainfall. Here's buffalo grass. I mentioned that one earlier. It's got the male and the female seed heads, and now you can kind of see them. The top one is that female burr, and then the bottom one is the male flag seed head. Hairy grama. It is a cousin to Cytodes grama, but it doesn't look exactly like it. It has what we call an eyebrow-like seed head that has a stinger at the end. It's also a little bunch grass, so this one is going to be something that you're going to maybe find on a caliche hill that hasn't been overgrazed. If it doesn't have the stinger, then it's something else. Oh, and then there's tall grama, which gets a little bit taller. The seed head is bigger and straighter. Hairy grama has a little bit of a curl to it sometimes on the seed head. Hairy tridents is this small, insignificant grass that I mentioned earlier. It has a silver lining to the edge of the leaf, and it can grow in some pretty barren areas and such. It is hairy. It is very hairy. It's hairy on both sides of the leaf. You can come up here later and look and see how hairy it is. The seed head is flat, and it stacks kind of like fish scales. So kind of looking at the picture in the middle, that's a good example. It doesn't get very big. I mean, this grass is not going to get bigger than my ankle high, unless someone goes in there and fertilizes the heck out of it. Red grama, I mentioned this one earlier. It's got seed heads that are kind of either a tan if they're dried out, or they're reddish. This grass too is going to be something that's not going to get very big. In fact, the example that I brought today is very healthy and lush. So this is kind of going to be as good as it gets for this grass. It's usually a lot smaller. It's usually clinging to the ground for dear life. But it is kind of pretty in its own way. It does not have the stinger on the end, and the seed head is kind of small and compacted. The foliage is very thin. Purple threon. Now, the threons are a little frustrating because what I brought today is actually technically not Aristida purpurea variety purpurea. It's radii. It's Wright's threon. It's technically not the true purple threon, but they're all grouped under the same Latin name. And so it's just one of those plant taxonomy things. Purple threon does have purplish like seed heads. And in fact, any of y'all seen a red harvester ant mound? Yeah, you've seen one. Okay. Have you ever noticed that grass that usually grows on the edge that kind of has like a purplish coloration to it? Very thin foliage? No? Okay. Well, take another look. Sometimes the ant beds have it, sometimes they don't. But this one actually lives kind of in harmony with those red harvester ant mounds, if it's in the area and such. Sometimes it's old field 3-on, but sometimes it's also purple 3-on. So the awns are long. It's a 3-on. So you remember the spear grass? It has that long awn sticking out of it so that you can easily throw it. The 3-on has 3 awns. So it basically has 3 points sticking out of the back. So this is another grass that commonly gets stuck in your socks when you're hiking so that you can move it to new places. A little bit annoying. Not much grazing value. I mean, look at that grass. Oh, wait, here. Let's look at this grass. Would you really want to eat any of this? Yeah, there's not much desirability there. Here's what I'm talking about, Zoom people. Would you want to eat that? Would you? Would you rather eat this? Yeah, think about how much more protein is in this compared to the other one, unless you're on a diet, but usually cows are not on a diet. So natives, we're fixing to get into the non-native plants, and I do kind of want to define native for y'all real quick, because there's one plant on this list that should not be planted anymore, and it's gotten a reputation for being native, which it should not be getting it. So native kind of depends on who you ask. Basically, I'm a purist. If it does not grow in my ecosystem or my ecozone, so if it does not grow in the Edwards Plateau, and I'll include the Llano Uplift, I do not consider it native. So if it's something that grows natively in East Texas, that's not native growing right here. So keep that in mind as we go through these next few grasses. Bermuda grass. Oh my gosh. So as an extension agent, I get calls about our native Bermuda grass all the time. If you thought Bermuda grass was native, do not raise your hands. I do not want to glare at you, but it is not native. This is not native. I know this grass is everywhere, and I know that it seems to be pretty prevalent, like east of I-35. Like that seems to be almost all what they have out there, but it is not native. This grass is introduced. So it has these nasty runners, these nasty stolons. It has these nasty rhizomes. It spreads like crazy. It's hard to get rid of. The seed head looks like a windmill, kind of like a turkey foot. You just have to pull this grass up to be able to identify it, basically. Then you'll know what you have once you try to pull it up. Our next grass is Wilman lovegrass. This grass isn't too terribly common. I don't really see too much of it. So I wouldn't say it's invasive, so to say, but it is present here in the hill country. It was brought in as a cattle forage. It typically dies out. It's got these big, flat, stacked seeds, and it's also commonly used in some of these seeding mixes and that kind of thing. So if you see this grass out there, no, you didn't find a new species. It is an introduced one. We know about it. Rescue grass. So rescue grass is so named because the ranchers, okay, this is a cool season grass. It's a cool season annual grass. It can take a lot of damage, a lot of grazing before it eventually succumbs. So imagine this. You're a rancher and you've got like 50 cows on 5 acres. No, that's a bit much. No, okay. Imagine you're a rancher and you've got 5 cows on 50 acres and the winter is coming and like it wasn't too green and such, and then you suddenly get a rain and it's like October, and then all this greenness pops up, and what is it? It's probably rescue grass. Rescue grass is so named because it rescues the ranchers in the winter. The foliage is very soft. It is pretty good grazing when it first comes up if you're cool about that, but it is not native and it can spread. I mean, I run into this grass the most in people's yards. So where people have yards that kind of have bare spots going into the fall, they'll call me in the spring when this grass is seeding out, not when the grass is growing. And they'll be like, I have this grass there and it's like taking over my yard. And it's kind of because they didn't do a good job taking care of it beforehand. But anyway, so this is rescue grass. It rescues the ranchers, but it does not rescue people who have yards. The seed head is stacked. It feels super soft. So you just have to kind of feel it to know that it might be rescue grass, unless it's its cousin, Japanese row, which is even softer. The seeds are awnless and flat. So if it's got awns on it, it's not rescue grass, usually. Johnson grass. Do we all know what this looks like? Have y'all all tried to pull this grass out of a flower bed? You haven't? Would you like to try? If anyone wants this experience, please come let me know after the presentation so that you can kind of appreciate how tough this grass is. So this grass has these rhizomes, and in my experience, it actually kind of likes areas that have deeper soil or moisture. So this is probably, you know what, I'm not going to say never, but it is very unlikely that you're going to find this one growing on top of a caliche hill unless there is something else going on. It could happen, but it's unlikely. The runners are big, white, and thick, and if you miss just a little bit of them, it will grow you a new Johnson grass plant. The seed heads are what we call a panicle seed head. They are big, they are broad, they are full of seeds, easy to spread, and it's also got a big white midrib. The midrib is kind of one of the ways that helped me identify it. It's big, it's white, it's in the middle of the leaf, and it's consistently there. This grass is the one that I wanted to talk about. So if you bought this grass and someone sold it to you as a native, now I don't know if you sell this one at your plant sale. I don't want to know if you sell this one at your plant sale. This one is not native. It is from far west Texas in the mountainous regions. So yes, it is native to Texas, but it is native to only a couple of counties in Texas. And it is invasive here. So think about it. When you've seen this grass being planted in kind of like the parking lots or in some of these locations, it's spreading. So if it's spreading in a parking lot, that is not a good sign. It can grow in cracks. So we don't want this grass to go everywhere. If you have some already, okay, that's fine. Please just do not plant any more. It is not that native. It is very pretty though, with its wind-swept foliage that goes over on one side, and it is amazingly drought tolerant, but please do not plant anymore. Our last grass is King Ranch bluestem. This one is not native either, and it is very hard to get rid of. This one is one where I'm kind of like, oh, I'm so glad that my coworker, Brad Rader, who's the ag agent, gets the questions about these on how to kill it out, because it's like, yeah, it's very difficult to kill out because this one has a huge seed bank, and then the plant almost seems to be resistant to glyphosate. So good luck. It's introduced, it's invasive. It actually gets kind of big if it doesn't get grazed down to the ground, and it is excellent for soil erosion, which is kind of why it got spread on roadsides all across Texas. The seed head is a windmill seed head. Honestly, it looks different if it gets overgrazed versus not grazed. So the seed head is very helpful though. Now, one grass that I will say something positive about this is that it can grow on caliche. So I've been on site visits to some of these new subdivisions coming in, and they didn't add in topsoil to put in a yard and that kind of thing. And one of the houses that I went to, they had this grass growing outside the yard, and they're like, we want to use that as our turf grass. And I was like, oh, and they're like, yes, we don't mind that it sends up a seed head every week, but it clings to the soil. They didn't have to add soil, and I think they planted it. So if all else fails, if you're trying to grow a yard, that probably won't. So can someone hit the lights? All right, so with that, we are going to do an activity. Ooh, lights. Yeah. This is a group activity. So we're going to do a scavenger hunt. As you may have noticed, I have hung plants. Some of them have fallen down. I will be rushing around to hang them right back up. There are plants hung all on the walls. I want you to get in groups of 3. Are there 60 people here? How many people are here? 50? Okay. Groups of 3 should be fine in case somebody wants to be like, I don't want to be in a group, and I'm cool with that. I didn't really like groups in high school. So I've got these sheets. Let me finish explaining it. So what I want you to do is I want you to practice what you have learned. And don't worry, you do not have to know all the grasses, though I would be so impressed if you do. I would give you a high five. But you only get the high five if you get them all right. But you're in a group of 3, so someone is bound to know something, and y'all are master naturalists, so someone is bound to know someone. So the people who do a lot of plant stuff, I would recommend that you partner up with them first before someone else gets them. I think y'all should try to be partners with Miss Hen. You got a pretty big badge today. Yeah, he probably knows all these grasses here. I would highly recommend that you partner with him. Todd? I was pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I will say this too. You know what? I made a test out. I'm not the nicest person. Some of these are doubles. So there are at least a few doubles on the wall, and then some of these names will be not used at all. I gave you a word bank though. I mean, that's helpful. Yes. So, you have at least 23 options to choose from. So there you go. But there are some doubles, and then some of these 23 options, a couple of them will not be used at all. So I'm sorry. All right. Once you find your two partners, come over here. I will give you the sheet, and then you can be let loose. Now, another thing, this is a scavenger hunt. So the plants, they're not in order on the walls. I mean, it's out of order. It's a scavenger hunt. And then a couple of them are hidden pretty well, unless they fell down, which means that I won't even find them. So, all right, go find your partners and let's get this done. I want to get this done in like 15 minutes. Yeah. Get at it. I will announce the answers at the end. How about two? You have another group? Okay. Oh. Okay, yeah, I can do that while they're doing that.
Okay.
Zoom audience, I would do Q&A with y'all while they're doing the activity. I think we can do it both.
That's good.
Thank you. I have.
Okay, here's chat. I got chat up. Wait, you want me to get those up?
Would you pass this up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. These are
So
the.
I'm on chat. Where are my questions? Oh, yeah, we probably should have done that. Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll try to later.
I know the kind of stuff.
All right, well, let's just adjust it right there. That's what I'm.
Any questions?
Mhm.
Thank you for doing this.
Hmm. Oh, you want the book? Oh, you're being clever, but you can't take that around with you. That would be cheating.
Why?
But you can come down here and look.
This could be cheating.
I only have 2 books.
I'm gonna touch it. Somebody can take them, I promise.
Okay, you can leave them here though.
Bring it up. Rinse them away. And then go to this. Run the slides.
This has nothing to do with grass per se. I told you once that I was planting muscadines.
Yeah.
And you said, well, you know how it goes. So I just lost my attention. But finally, with some rain this year, can you see that? See, I got 6 boxes there. There are also some that are on the fence, but I have a lot of muscadines.
Nice. You can leave it up there. I don't want to lose it, so yeah, leave it up there.
So it seems to be working.
Okay,
Now we
nice,
got a little
nice.
bit of rain this year.
Yeah, the rain has been really helpful. Yeah.
So just want to update you. You have many people, nobody's growing them up in Fredericksburg.
I tested out them maybe only a couple more times. But I have told them that they typically don't grow. I mean, if you can get them to grow, let me know.
We'll see how it goes. I'll bring you some.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Camera's still on.
No, not the Bermuda. The one that's on the left. Yes. Oh, okay. It's that kind
Thanks, Brett. Enjoyed the presentation and sorry you didn't have better.
That's okay.
information.
Yes.
Now, I had some questions here.
Yes.
So are we done with this?
Oh, I was gonna see if maybe I could show the plants to them.
Okay. You want me to?
Let me help them first.
Okay. Did you answer them all?
Sure.
If they give me a hairy brand, I can do
Got it. I mean, this is only my, it was 2019, right? Last 20 years later. It's a lot of information. Let me just go water and trees. So I can build a suitable berm. I can name maybe 25 trees. Yeah, it looks kind of similar, but it can't be a typo. Is it a burrow? I don't know. Is it lacy oak?
I've learned it on our hike and so I know that one just, he doesn't move. The birds move. I have problems with that.
And forget about birds. Anything that moves, forget it. All I know is right till we're overpopulated there at where I live at, and that's it. You know, people just want to feed them. It's okay. The hell with Bambi.
Oh, yeah. We have too many Bambis.
Yeah, the deer will put out twins when they're eating like a buffet line every day,
And we have that access to keep twice as much.
which is not bad, but you can kill it at the same time you want and eat it.
Not in our neighborhood.
Track it. It's not a good smell. Now, white-tailed deer you can't do because.
If y'all need any hints, these plants down here are labeled, just FYI. That may or may not be helpful.
Okay, but did you want to send a message to the audience?
Oh.
Whoever's there?
Yes,
About, you said you're gonna show them some grasses?
yeah, let me go sneak one of those grasses.
This is the book fair.
Yes. can you look at that?
When I think about. Oh, yeah, that one too. Okay, can't limp around, miss, limp around. How you doing?
Very interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
The only thing I would have wanted additional information on as you went through was how deep the roots. often go. Because I've seen pictures of the switchgrass with 15-foot.
Yeah, well, you gotta have the soil.
Yeah.
For that. I'm gonna go run and get grasses.
Oh, yes.
No, but there's a really cute one over there.
I-
You a pin?
No, where's? Oh, do you need a pen? Thank you.
Yes, I'm gonna check.
Oh, I showed this. They were all over. That's how I knew.
Oh, I don't want to, I think people are still looking at
I
it.
know.
Okay.
What, going that way, because it seems to go in a clockwise? I'll get the next one up.
Yeah, well, people are kind of like, they're walking around looking at them, so.
You get another one now.
Yeah, give me another one.
Are they in cut? Brad.
Put that one back there. I want to put the plants back where they were at. So it's not, we're not being too mean. Yes, I'm trying to help you. Are you? No, I haven't seen that. Oh, that's your. Sir Pastor Newton. Sir Pastor Newton. That's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got to go home. Take some medicines.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Is this
You got a
time to ask my
test.
questions?
Oh,
Test for you.
okay, yeah, all I'm doing is holding the grasses up. I think people are guessing. No, that was not Little
Oh,
Booston.
now I'm on camera. I Zoom crowd. Oh, I see. She's showing the Zoom people. So they can guess. Well, I'll come up with it.
Yeah,
Okay, and then.
Five. 3, 2, 1, 0. Give me 3 more. Oh, so that's not helpful.
Out of the way, right? And this is one that should open it. We still got blank, yeah, and they disappeared very good. We've got blank.
What are y'all missing? Are y'all missing number 11?
We're missing 1, 3, 7.
I wonder where they're at.
Y'all have a from the list.
The next one.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. What? Oh, well, we don't do it through Zoom.
No, the countdown.
Oh, yes, I do a lot of countdowns with my kids.
Fiber optics, they're burying it all underground. And she said, they can get their room. They went. Let me see that yet.
5-minute warning.
They know way they want.
5-minute warning.
And I've got where you go. He said.
If you're looking for a plant, come up here. I might give you a hint, or I might not.
Seven.
Oh, what's that?
That's tall.
It is tall.
That one has a very big bushy base. Sometimes it can grow near water. Sometimes it can grow in uplands. Switchgrass? No, look at the seedbed. It might be from the east, you know?
Might be from the east.
That's, she has double fold.
Number 7, she got them hitting all over.
It's
The
a
only one I
scavenger hunt.
really know for sure. Yeah. This one? Look at this here. What is it? Gamma. What's it, gamma, Chris? You said gamma.
Gala.
I said gamma.
Are they making weird comments?
You say gamma, I say.
Yeah. Well, we've got it. Anyway, your definition of native, because I'm doing a lot of trying to figure out on there.
So you think.
Last one.
Last one.
Can they hear me on this?
They should. Did you leave it on?
Last one.
This is the last one going on.
Y'all have 3 minutes.
Because.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
You've done a lot on it.
Where are these hidden ones? 20, you're holding one. What? Ah. Hidden.
Very much.
All right.
Oh,
5,
7.
Yes.
oh, you're.
Yeah, 20. No, I thought 20. But I missed a couple. So 6 and 7. Those one of them. Okay.
1 minute. All right.
Oh, I know that. I see that down by the river.
We're gonna go over the answers. Did everybody find every plant? No? Yes? Found plants? Okay. Well, we're not gonna do what I do with the kids, meaning that we run around and look at them. We're gonna do this like adults, as soon as I can find my answers. All right, here are our answers. Number 1, green sprangletop. Number 2, big blue stem. Number 3, broom sedge blue stem. No, I don't think so. I want broom sedge. Broom sedge. 4, vine mesquite. Vine mesquite. 5, Texas wintergrass. It's the same as speargrass. If you put speargrass, I will count speargrass. Number 6. I don't know. Oh, 13's right there. We'll find out that later. Number 6 is yellow Indian grass. Number 7 is eastern gama grass. Number 8 was Canada wild rye. Number 9 was Canada wild rye. Y'all got that one right too? Oh, well, I wasn't sneaky enough.
That was tricky though.
That was tricky. Did you double guess yourself?
We actually had them, but just
Okay,
had a while.
okay. Number 10 was King Ranch blue stem. 11 was Harry Tridents. 12 was red grama. 13 was Johnson grass. A lot of sharing on that one. It was right over there. 14 was purple 3-on. 15 was little blue stem. 16 was rescue grass. 17 was Texas cupgrass. 18 was Johnson grass. I don't know. We'll find 18 later. 19 was Bermuda grass. 20 was buffalo grass. Does anyone have any bingos? All right, let's count this down. Did anyone get all 20 correct? Did anyone get, oh, well, it's a scavenger hunt. Did anyone get 15 or more correct? Oh, sweet. Good job. Good job. Good job. You got 18? You're just missing the 2 plants? Okay. Well, you can come with me when I put them up. We're going to try and find these.
Yes.
All right, Zoom people. I'm sorry. Well, here's my list. I can type it in if you want me to. Oh, we are done. So thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. And thank you for surviving. Sorry.